The first sign wasn't a message, or a call, or lipstick on a collar. It was a calendar notification. I was sitting at her kitchen table, early morning light coming in through the window, coffee going cold in my hands, when her phone buzzed on the counter. She was still in the shower. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I just glanced over because the sound cut through the quiet. The notification read, "Anniversary dinner. Don't forget the gift." The date wasn't ours. I remember checking my watch like I'd misunderstood time itself. Maybe it was an old reminder. Maybe it was for her sister. Maybe it was something work-related that just happened to use a weird label. I told myself all of that in about 3 seconds. Then the phone buzzed again. Same reminder. Same date. Different year. Repeating annually. That's when my stomach dropped, slow and heavy, like I'd missed a step on a staircase. We'd been together almost 4 years. Not the dramatic, explosive kind of relationship people warn you about, but the quiet, settled kind. Shared grocery lists, toothbrushes in the same cup, arguments about nothing important. The kind of love that doesn't feel fragile. Which is why that notification felt so wrong. I didn't touch her phone. I didn't unlock it. I just sat there staring at the black screen once it went dark again, trying to understand how something so small could make everything feel unstable. When she came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping onto her shoulders, she smiled like she always did. Soft, familiar. I smiled back and hated myself a little for how easy it still was. The rest of the day passed like a performance. We talked about work, about dinner plans, about nothing. I waited for my heart to slow down, for the anxiety to prove itself wrong. It didn't. That night, after she fell asleep, I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying moments from the past year that suddenly felt different. The sudden weekend trips, the way she'd started guarding her phone, not aggressively, just subtly. How she'd stopped tagging me in photos. None of it had felt alarming on its own. Together, it felt like a pattern I'd refused to see. The next morning, I asked her about the calendar. I kept my voice light, casual, like I was asking about a dentist appointment. "Oh," she said quickly, it's just an old thing. I forgot to delete it." "For who?" I asked. She hesitated, just a beat too long. "A friend," she said. "From years ago." Years ago. I nodded. Let go, or at least pretended to. But once doubt takes root, it doesn't need encouragement. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more. She started taking calls in other rooms. Her schedule became unpredictable. She'd cancel plans last minute with explanations that didn't quite line up. I wasn't angry yet. I was confused. And confusion is dangerous, because it makes you question your own instincts before you question anyone else. The breaking point came from something stupid. Laundry. I was folding clothes one evening while she cooked. The smell of garlic and oil filling the apartment. Normal. Domestic. Safe. That's when I found it in the pocket of a jacket I didn't recognize. A receipt. Fancy restaurant. 2 entrees. 1 dessert. 2 glasses of wine. Dated last Friday. The night she'd said she was too exhausted to come over. I stood there holding that receipt like it might explain itself if I stared long enough. When I showed it to her, she didn't deny it. She sighed. Not guilty. Not shocked. Tired. "I didn't know how to tell you," she said. Those words hurt more than if she'd yelled or lied, because they meant she'd known for a while. She sat down across from me, hands folded, eyes glossy but steady. She said it wasn't just one person. It hadn't started as cheating. It had started as feeling unseen. That phrase again. The greatest hit of every betrayal story. She talked about emotional distance, about growing apart, about how she didn't want to hurt me. I asked one question. "How long?" She told me. Long enough that my chest felt hollow. There were anniversaries I'd celebrated alone without knowing it. Arguments she'd had with someone else while smiling at me. A version of her life that existed entirely outside the one I thought we were sharing. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just listened. And in that listening, something else became clear. She wasn't confessing because she felt guilty. She was confessing because she was tired of managing two lives. That night, I didn't sleep at her place. I walked home instead, letting the cold air burn my lungs, replaying everything from the beginning. The first date, the promises, the way she used to look at me like I was the safest place she knew. I realized that the hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was understanding that the relationship I was mourning had ended long before I'd been invited to the conversation. By the time she finally told me the truth, she'd already practiced life without me. And I was just now finding out. That's where the story really begins. The next few days passed in a strange blur, like I was living slightly outside my own body. I still went to work, still answered messages, still ate meals, but everything felt muted, like the world had been wrapped in cotton. She texted me the morning after I left. Not apologies, not explanations, just, "Can we talk later?" That was the first thing that made me angry. Not the cheating, not even the lies. The fact that, after everything, she still thought this was a conversation she could schedule. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I'd been avoiding since the night before. I opened my laptop and pulled up old photos. Not because I wanted to torture myself, but because I needed to understand when things actually broke. I scrolled back years. Birthdays, trips, inside jokes frozen in pixels. We looked happy. We probably were, at least at the start. But then I noticed something unsettling. At some point, the photos became less about us and more about moments. Less eye contact, more posed smiles, more distance between our bodies, even when we were standing next to each other. I'd been there the whole time. I just hadn't been present. Around noon, she showed up at my place unannounced. I knew it was her before I opened the door. The knock had a hesitation to it. Not confident, not desperate, somewhere in between. She looked smaller standing there. Not physically, but emotionally. Like someone who'd rehearsed what to say and still wasn't sure would land. "I didn't want to end things like this," she said. That sentence did something sharp to my chest. "Like what?" I asked. "You already ended them. You just forgot to tell me." She flinched. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, a distance that felt deliberate. She started explaining again, filling the air with words she thought would soften the truth. How she hadn't planned for it to happen. How it started slow. How she felt trapped between honesty and fear. I stopped her. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" I asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked down. That was answer enough. I asked about the calendar reminder. She admitted it wasn't an accident. She kept it because it mattered to her, because that relationship had weight. "Then why stay with me?" I asked. Her voice was quiet when she said it. "Because you were safe." That word hit harder than anything else she'd said. Safe. Not loved. Not chosen. Safe. I realized then that while I thought we were building a future, she'd been using me as a buffer against loneliness. A stable place to land while she explored feelings elsewhere. She said she didn't want to lose me completely, that maybe we could still be in each other's lives. That's when I finally stood up. "No," I said, calmly, clearly. "You don't get to keep the parts of me that are convenient." She cried then. Real tears. The kind that usually would have undone me. This time, they didn't. Because something had shifted. For the first time since the notification on her phone, I wasn't confused. I was clear. I told her she needed to leave. She lingered at the door, hoping I'd change my mind. Hoping for one last emotional exchange that might make her feel less like the villain of her own story. I didn't give it to her. When the door closed, the apartment felt too quiet. But it was an honest quiet. Not the kind filled with unsaid things. The weeks that followed were harder than I expected. Not because I missed her exactly, but because my brain kept rewriting memories, trying to figure out which ones were real and which ones were compromised. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text her something stupid. A meme. A thought. Then I'd remember. I started walking at night. Long, aimless routes through the city, replaying conversations, dissecting tone, and timing like it might reveal something useful. Eventually, I realized the truth. There was nothing left to uncover. The betrayal wasn't hidden. It wasn't complex. It wasn't even dramatic. It was quiet, gradual, comfortable, and that's what scared me the most. Months later, I ran into her by accident at a grocery store. Same aisle, same brand of coffee we used to argue about. She smiled awkwardly, asked how I was. I told her I was fine, and I was. Not because everything had healed perfectly, but because I'd learned something important. Love doesn't disappear all at once. It erodes when one person stops choosing the relationship while the other keeps assuming choice is mutual. Walking away that day, I didn't feel anger. I felt relief. Relief that I wasn't questioning my instincts anymore. Relief that I wasn't settling for being someone's safe option. Relief that the truth, painful as it was, finally belonged to me. Looking back, the calendar notification wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the moment I finally paid attention. If you were in my place, would you have tried to fix it once you knew the truth? Or would you have walked away the moment you realized you were never fully chosen? I didn't realize my life was about to split into a before and after the day, I overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for me. It was an ordinary evening, the kind you forget the moment it ends. I had come home earlier than usual because work had wrapped up fast. No traffic, no calls, no distractions. Just a quiet apartment and the strange relief of having nothing urgent to deal with. I remember putting my keys down and noticing how still everything felt. Too still. The lights in the living room were on, but no one was there. My first thought was that my partner must be in the bedroom, probably on a call. I wasn't trying to listen. I wasn't suspicious. I just heard my name. That does something to you. It sharpens your focus instantly. I froze in the hallway, one hand still resting on the doorframe, my jacket half off. Her voice came from the bedroom, low and careful, the way people talk when they think privacy is guaranteed. "No, he doesn't know," she said. There was a pause. I couldn't hear the other voice, but I could imagine it. Someone asking questions. Someone who already knew too much. She sighed. "Because it's better this way. For now. For now." I stood there longer than I should have, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would give me away. I wanted to believe I'd misunderstood. That context would make it harmless. That my name had come up coincidentally. But then she said something that erased all doubt. If he ever finds out, it'll destroy him. That was when I quietly stepped back and walked out of the apartment. I don't remember how I got to my car. I don't remember the drive. I only remember sitting there, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at my reflection in the windshield like I was trying to recognize the person I'd been 5 minutes earlier. I didn't confront her that night. Not because I was scared, but because I knew myself well enough to know I needed clarity before emotion took over. So I waited. The next few days were torture. I acted normal. Ate dinner with her. Listened to her talk about work, about friends, about plans we supposedly shared. Every word felt like it was layered over something rotten. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. Her phone never left her side anymore. She angled the screen away from me without realizing it. She laughed differently when certain names came up, and then there were the gaps. Moments where she was unreachable. Hours explained away too easily. Stories that sounded rehearsed. I didn't want to become someone who snooped. I'd always hated that idea. Trust, to me, was supposed to be a baseline, not a privilege earned daily. But trust had already been broken. I just didn't know how badly yet. One night, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the bedside table. A message preview flashed across the screen. I won't repeat the exact words, but it wasn't subtle. It wasn't ambiguous. It was intimate in a way that left no room for interpretation. My hand shook as I picked up the phone. I told myself I'd just look once. Just enough to confirm what I already knew. That was a lie. I scrolled and felt my chest tighten with every message. This wasn't new. It hadn't started recently. It had been going on for months. Conversations full of inside jokes, late-night confessions, complaints about me disguised as Vince. The worst part wasn't the flirting. It was the way she talked about our life like it was an inconvenience. Like I was an obstacle she hadn't figured out how to move yet. I sat there long after the shower stopped running, staring at the phone like it had bitten me. When she came out and saw in my hands, her face changed instantly. Not shock, not confusion, recognition. That told me everything. We didn't yell. There was no dramatic explosion, just a heavy silence that pressed down on the room. She asked how much I'd seen. I told her enough. She sat down slowly, like her body suddenly weighed more than usual. She started explaining, but her words blurred together. I wasn't listening to meaning anymore, just tone. Guilt, fear, relief that the secret was out. She said it hadn't meant to go this far, that it started as emotional support, that she felt unseen, that she never planned to hurt me. I asked one question. Was I ever enough for you? She didn't answer right away. That pause lasted longer than any argument we'd ever had. That's when I realized something important. The betrayal wasn't just about cheating. It was about rewriting reality while standing right next to me. It was about sharing a bed with someone while giving the most honest parts of herself to someone else. I told her I needed time. She nodded quickly, almost eagerly, like time was something she could use to fix things. I packed a bag and left. At my friend's place that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship, wondering how long I'd been the only one trying, wondering how many truths I'd never get answers to. What scared me most wasn't losing her. It was realizing how easily someone could live a double life right beside you, smiling, planning, promising, while quietly preparing an exit you didn't know existed. And I hadn't even uncovered the worst part yet. That came later. I thought the worst pain would come from what I already knew. I was wrong. The days after I left felt unreal, like I was floating just above my own life, watching someone else live it badly. My friend gave me space. No questions, no forced advice, just silence and food appearing when I forgot to eat. She texted constantly. Long messages, apologies, explanations, promises to cut contact, promises to change, promises that came a little too smoothly, like they'd been practiced in advance. I didn't reply, not because I was playing games, but because every time I tried to type something, my hand stopped working. I didn't trust my emotions yet. They were still raw, still loud, still capable of making decisions I'd regret. On the fourth day, something small happened that cracked everything open. I went back to the apartment to pick up more clothes. I told her I'd come while she was at work. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want tears or bargaining or explanations that made it harder to stay clear-headed. The apartment smelled the same. Our place, or what I used to call ours. As I moved through the rooms, I noticed things that felt off. Not dramatic, subtle. A drawer in the desk was slightly open. Why never used. I don't know why I opened it. Inside was a folder. Not hidden, not locked, just sitting there like it belonged. Inside the folder were printed emails. My name was all over them. There were messages between her and someone else. Not the person I'd seen on her phone. Someone older. Someone professional. A lawyer. I sat down on the floor. The emails weren't about cheating. They weren't about feelings. They were about planning. About timelines. About assets. About how to protect her interests if things ended suddenly. I read every word slowly, carefully, like my brain refused to accept what my eyes were showing it. She'd been preparing for months. Not just emotionally, legally, financially. There were notes about shared purchases, suggestions on how to document contributions, advice on how to frame the breakup if things became hostile. Hostile. I laughed out loud. A short, sharp sound that startled me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't someone who got lost and didn't know how to come back. This was someone who planned an exit while letting me believe we were building something permanent. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Her name. I answered. She sounded relieved, like she'd been holding her breath for days. You're there, aren't you? I didn't ask how she knew. I found a folder, I said. Silence. Not denial. Not confusion. Just silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Flat. Controlled. Careful. I was just trying to be prepared. For what? I asked. For betraying me more efficiently? She started crying then. Or at least her voice did. But something about it felt hollow now, like I'd already seen behind the curtain. She said she felt trapped, that she loved me, but wasn't sure she wanted the life we were heading toward. That she didn't want to hurt me, but she didn't want to be unprotected either. I asked her if she ever planned to tell me. She hesitated. That hesitation answered everything. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I didn't beg. I told her I was done. Fully. Finally. No buts. No, maybe someday. She begged me to talk in person, to give her a chance to explain everything properly. I said no, because some explanations don't heal. They only make the wound more complicated. The next few weeks were brutal in quieter ways. Mutual friends reached out, confused by the sudden split. Some of them knew pieces of the story already. I could tell by the way they spoke, careful not to upset me. She controlled the narrative faster than I expected. I was emotionally distant. I overreacted. I checked out before she did. Nothing outright false. Just twisted enough to make her look reasonable and me look cold. I wanted to correct it. To show people the truth. The folder. The messages. The planning. But something stopped me. Not fear. Clarity. I realized I didn't need to convince anyone who mattered. The people who knew me well enough didn't question my silence. And the ones who did weren't worth bleeding for. Months passed. I rebuilt my routines. New gym. New schedule. New version of myself that didn't orbit around someone else's uncertainty. And then, unexpectedly, she reached out again. Not with apologies. With a request. She wanted help. Something had gone wrong. The person she'd been seeing seriously after me turned out to be married. The legal planning she'd done didn't protect her the way she thought it would. Some mutual finances were messier than expected. She said she trusted me more than anyone. That sentence almost broke me. Almost. I told her I couldn't help. She asked why. I answered honestly. Because I loved you when you were planning how to leave me. I won't help you clean up the mess you made by treating people like backup plans. She didn't reply. I blocked her number after that. Not out of anger. Out of self-respect. It's been a long time now. I don't hate her. I don't wish her harm. I just see her clearly. And that clarity is something I earned the hard way. The scariest part of betrayal isn't the moment you discover it. It's realizing how long someone can smile at you while quietly preparing to walk away, leaving you to believe in a future they already abandoned. If you were in my place, would you have confronted sooner, or would you have walked away the moment you saw the planning behind the lies? Let me know what you think. I didn't realize my life was about to split into a before and an after on a random Tuesday night. It started with something so small I almost ignored it. A sound, a soft click from the hallway, like plastic tapping against glass. If I hadn't been half awake, scrolling on my phone in bed, I never would have noticed it. I thought it was the AC. Then it happened again. Click. I held my breath. My partner was asleep next to me, facing the wall. Slow, even breathing. No movement. The house was quiet in that way. It only gets late at night, when everything feels exposed. I slipped out of bed, quietly, and opened the door, just a crack. The hallway was dark, except for a faint blue glow near the ceiling corner above the bookshelf. My stomach dropped. I knew that light. It was a camera indicator. I stood there frozen, heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake the whole house. We didn't have security cameras inside. We talked about it before and agreed it felt invasive. Outside was fine. Inside was a hard no. I took a step closer. The camera was small, black, carefully angled, blended into the shelf like it belonged there, pointed directly at our bedroom door, at me. My first thought was intruders, some twisted prank. But the longer I stared, the more impossible that felt. The wiring was clean, hidden, intentional. This wasn't random. This was planned. I unplugged it. The blue light died instantly. The silence afterward was deafening. I stood there shaking, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My mind raced through every possibility except the one sitting right in front of me. Because accepting that one meant accepting something far worse than fear. I carried the camera into the bedroom and set it gently on the dresser. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. It took a few minutes, but eventually my partner stirred. Groggy. Confused. "What's wrong?" they mumbled. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just picked up the camera and held it out. Their eyes snapped open instantly. That reaction told me everything. They didn't ask what it was. They didn't ask where I found it. They just stared at it like a child caught with their hand in a jar. "How long?" I asked. Silence. "How long have you been recording me?" Their mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. "It's not what you think," they said. That sentence felt like a slap. "Then explain it," I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay calm. "Explain why there's a hidden camera pointed at our bedroom." They sat up slowly, rubbing their face, stalling, buying time. Finally, they said, "I just needed proof." "Proof of what?" They hesitated. "Of things." Something inside me snapped. "Say it," I said. "Say it clearly." They looked away. "I thought you were hiding something." I laughed. A sharp, broken sound I didn't recognize as my own. "So you decided to spy on me?" "It wasn't spying," they said quickly. "It was just precaution. I didn't want to accuse you without evidence." Evidence. That word echoed in my head. I asked to see the footage. They refused. Their refusal hurt more than the camera itself. I demanded access. I told them if they didn't show me everything, right now, I was leaving. They cracked then. They admitted there were multiple cameras. Not just one. Two more. One in the living room. One near the front door. All hidden. All recording. I felt sick. "How long?" I asked again. "A few months." A few months. I thought about all the private moments. The arguments. The crying. The times I sat on the couch alone, thinking I was unseen. The nights I talked out loud to myself when I thought no one was listening. All archived. All watched. All judged. I asked them why they didn't just talk to me. They said they were scared I'd lie. That answer destroyed something fundamental between us. I told them I was done, that I was leaving immediately. They panicked, started crying, apologizing, saying they'd delete everything, that they never meant to hurt me. But the damage was already done. I packed a bag that night. As I was about to walk out, they said something that made me stop cold. "There's something else you should know." I turned around slowly. They swallowed hard. I shared some of the footage. My blood went ice cold. "With who?" I whispered. They didn't answer right away. "With someone who was helping me figure things out." "Who?" They finally said a name. Someone I knew. Someone we both trusted. Someone who smiled at me regularly. The room felt like it was tilting. I left without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed at a friend's place, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction, every moment, wondering who had been watching me without my consent. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a violation. And I wasn't going to let it end quietly. When morning finally came, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like exposure. Sunlight through the window made everything too real. Too sharp. I lay there replaying the words over and over in my head. I shared some of the footage. Every time I thought about it, my chest tightened again. I didn't cry. Not at first. I was past that stunned, hollow stage where emotions haven't caught up yet. Instead, my brain went into survival mode. Inventory. Damage control. Questions. How much footage? What moments? How many times? Who else? Where was it stored? Was it copied? I texted my partner one message and one message only. "I need everything. Every file. Every device. Every login. Now." They replied almost immediately. Long apology. Promises. Begging. Saying they'd do anything. Good. Because I was done being polite. By noon, I was back at the house, not alone. I brought my friend Mark with me. Not because I needed muscle, but because I needed a witness. Someone steady. Someone calm. My partner looked wrecked. Red eyes. No sleep. They tried to hug me. I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I said. The house felt different. Smaller. Like the walls had ears. I went straight to the router. Took photos of the model number. The connected devices. Then the laptop. The external hard drive I hadn't known existed. A phone I didn't recognize. "What's that?" I asked, pointing. They hesitated. My stomach dropped again. That's not your phone, is it? They shook their head. Whose is it? Silence. I walked over and picked it up. No lock screen. Notifications still visible. A messaging app was open. And there it was. A conversation thread between my partner and the person whose name they'd said the night before. The one who smiled at me. The one I trusted. My hand started shaking so badly Mark gently took the phone from me and placed it on the table. You don't have to read it right now, he said quietly. But I did. I forced myself to. The messages weren't sexual. That almost would have been easier to process. They were analytical. Cold. Time-stamped observations. She stayed up late again. She seemed nervous after the call. Watch her body language here. Pause at 14:32. That reaction is telling. They were dissecting me. Like I was a subject. Like I wasn't a person. I felt something inside me harden. How long have they been involved? I asked. My partner's voice was barely audible. Almost from the beginning. How did it start? They planted the idea. They admitted. Said you're hiding something. That people don't act the way you do unless there's a reason. I laughed. A slow, disbelieving laugh. So you trusted them more than me. They didn't answer. That was answer enough. I copied everything. Every file. Every message. Every video. Not because I wanted to watch it. I didn't, but because I needed control. Evidence. Leverage. Then I did something my partner didn't expect. I called the other person. They answered cheerfully, like nothing was wrong. Hey, what's up? I put them on speaker. You watched me, I said calmly. Without my consent. A pause. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. I smiled for the first time in days. Yes, you do, I said. And if you don't want this to become a legal conversation instead of a personal one, you'll come here. Now, they tried to deflect, deny, minimize. I hung up. An hour later, they showed up. Seeing them in my space felt unreal. Like two worlds colliding. They avoided my eyes. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I asked one question. Why? They sighed like they were inconvenienced. I was trying to help, they said. You seemed off. I thought your partner deserved to know the truth. The truth about what? I asked. They shrugged. That's what we were trying to find out. That was the moment everything clicked. There was never any evidence. There was never any secret. They just decided I was suspicious. And instead of talking to me like a human being, they built a surveillance operation. I told them to leave. They smirked. You can't prove anything, they said. That was a mistake. Because that's when Mark spoke up. Actually, he said calmly, you just admitted to it. On recording. Their face went pale. I didn't pursue revenge the way people imagine it. Screaming matches, public humiliation, dramatic confrontations. I went methodical. I consulted a lawyer. I learned my rights. I documented everything. And then I let consequences do the work. The footage was deleted, verified. Cease and desist letters were sent. Professional relationships quietly dissolved. Trust networks shifted. People asked questions. Stories didn't match. Reputations cracked. I didn't have to destroy anyone. The truth did that on its own. As for my partner, we didn't reconcile. They begged, promised therapy, promised transparency. But there are lines you don't cross. Once someone watches you without your consent, the relationship is already over. They just haven't accepted it yet. I moved out, started over. It took months to feel safe again, to stop scanning rooms, to stop covering laptop cameras instinctively. But here's the part that still shocks me. The person who betrayed me the most wasn't the one who installed the cameras. It was the one who convinced them I deserved it. And that's what scares me the most. How easily suspicion turns into justification. And how quickly trust can be replaced with control. If you were in my place, would you have walked away quietly or taken it further? Let me know what you think in the comments, because I read every single one. And if you want more real, intense stories like this, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.